There are three guarantees in this life: death, taxes, and no matter what content I make, somebody is going to go into my comments and say, just switch to Linux, you idiot. And honestly, for some people, that's a great solution. But then there's the rest of us. A lot of us have bought software for Windows, or we have apps that only work in Windows. So how do you get the speed, efficiency, and privacy of Linux without giving up the Windows tools that you need? That's exactly what I'm going to show you today. We're going to create what's known as a dual boot environment to where you can have both Windows and Linux at the same time. So you don't lose that precious Windows software you paid for, and you get to experience the speed and privacy of Linux. And if you decide later on down the road that Linux isn't for you, it's easy to remove. Or if you decide that Windows isn't for you, also easy to remove. Let's get into it. So for any of you who have watched my content, you know Linda. Linda's been good to me over the years, but unfortunately I can't upgrade her from Windows 10 to Windows 11 because she doesn't meet the hardware requirements, and she's just getting a little slow and sluggish. So now I basically have this computer that has been upgraded to a newer computer, and I don't really know what to do with her. She is a perfect candidate for Linux, and some of you out there may have a computer that just isn't as fast as it used to be, but maybe you don't have the money to upgrade. Linux might be a great alternative for you. So that's one of the things that I want to show you today, how you can run Windows alongside of Linux and have the best of both worlds. That way a computer doesn't end up in the landfill, and you actually have a computer that might do the things that you need to do on a daily basis. Hey everyone, my name's Scott Merrill. I've been in IT for nearly 35 years, and what we do on this channel is Windows tips, tricks, reviews, troubleshooting, and more. We discuss the what and the why before the how. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, make sure you check out my video catalog because I got a ton of videos you might like. Additionally, one of the things that I love doing is making recommendations for people who really just don't know what to buy. There is a link in the description. If you fill out that quick form, I will laser focus and find you exactly what you need for your budget. It's 100% free. I'm happy to do it. Now, one last thing. If you are watching this content on TikTok, it is stolen content. Someone has taken all my videos and uploaded it to TikTok, created their own channel. I don't see any of the comments. I don't see any of the revenue. So if you're watching this on TikTok, stop what you're doing, report that video, report that channel. It's not me. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about getting Linux installed on this old potato. So why dual boot? Well, as I said, you may have software that you've purchased before that you don't want to lose. Maybe it's valuable to your work or your job. Maybe you have software that only runs in Windows and maybe isn't available on any other operating system. Maybe you've got an old program that you use, but you just don't want to abandon it. Maybe your PC can't upgrade to Windows 11. Maybe you don't want Windows 11. There's an old expression that you could run Linux on a potato, and that's kind of true because the hardware requirements really aren't that much. So it's perfect for those computers that maybe are just too old for your daily driver, but we can bring them to life installing Linux. It's going to make your old hardware feel much faster. It's going to have more privacy, none of that telemetry and spying from Microsoft. You're going to get a clean, private operating system for your daily usage. And you're not stuck. You can remove it if you don't like it. Dual booting gives you flexibility without the commitment. So there are some system requirements before you get started doing this. So first of all, you're going to need a flash drive to download and create the Linux installer disk. It needs to be at least 4 gigabytes. The larger, the better. 8 gigabytes is probably going to be just fine for most people. I'll put a link in the description to a flash drive if you don't have one. I also encourage you to watch this video all the way through so that you see the process from beginning to end. I don't want you to have to start the process and pause and hit play, whatever. Watch the whole thing so you know exactly what's going to happen, you know what to expect. Additionally, on the computer that you are creating a dual boot environment on, you're going to need at least 30 gigabytes of free space. If you don't have that, you need to either offload documents or delete files, uninstall applications, or whatever. Linux is going to really need 30 gigabytes to run. Now, what I would recommend is clear off more than that, because if you start using Linux, you're going to want to install programs and you're going to need room to do that. So I would say 30 gigs just to try it. I would recommend 50, 60 gigabytes to give you some wiggle room for those programs. We're also going to need to download Linux. Just so you understand, there are different versions of Linux, many versions. They're called distros, short for distributions, and there's a ton of them. You can actually go to distroc.com and check them out. I did make a video about that where you can just literally check them out online and kind of get a feel for what you like. The one I have chosen for this particular machine and for this particular video is one called Linux Mint Cinnamon. And the reason for that is because when it comes to Linux, I'm an absolute novice. I'm just like you. I don't know anything. I'm learning as I go. Linux Mint Cinnamon, from everything I've read, is the most Windows-like. So if you're familiar with Windows, you've been using Windows forever, this is the one that's going to kind of feel like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can figure this out. I can click. It's not a whole bunch of weird, I don't know what to do stuff. It's a lot of point and click like Windows. So that's why I chose it, because again, I'm a dummy when it comes to Linux. We're also going to need a program to create that installer disk, and I'll show you all of that here in just a minute. Most importantly, if you haven't done so already, stop what you're doing, back up your data. Everything should go smoothly, but if Windows is involved at any point, you know how it goes. Stop what you're doing. If you haven't backed up, do that now before you continue. So as you can see here, I've got my flash drive now plugged into the computer. Also be aware that the process of creating a Linux distribution is going to wipe everything on this flash drive. Please do not use a flash drive that has any personal data on it, because it is going to be wiped. But once you have an empty or new drive plugged in, just make note right here of the drive letter. In this case, it's drive J. And once we know that information, now we can go get the installer. Okay, so here we are at the Linux Mint download page, and you can see here that there are several different versions of Linux Mint. There's the Cinnamon, XFCE, Mate, whatever. I'm going to go with the simplest novice-friendly version, which is this one here, Linux Mint Cinnamon. Now, of course, you can go check out the features, anything like that, if you want to see that before you try it. In the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and click download. So on the download page, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit here, and then I'm just going to pick one of these mirrors that is closest to my country. So you're going to see here, it's going to download the Linux Mint Cinnamon ISO file or ISO file. Go ahead and make sure you know where it's going. In this case, it's going into downloads, and just go ahead and save, and the program will start downloading. Now, it's about 3 gigabytes, so it's going to take a while. As soon as that's done, we'll pick up where we left off. Okay, so the download is now finished, but now what we have to do is create the installation disk. Now, the Linux Mint installation guide here for creating a bootable media suggests to use a program called Balena Etcher. I tried several times using that program and could not get it to work. It kept failing on me. So I'm going to use another program that I've used many times before called Rufus. You can get to it at rufus.ie, and you'll see this page here. All you have to do is click download, just download it, and then run it. Now, what you're going to want to do is, first in this process, we have to select the drive that we're going to create the image on, and then we're going to select the ISO image. So here it is got my flash drive automatically selected, but in your case, you may have to actually choose that flash drive. In this case, drive J, I'm good to go there. For the disk image, I'm going to go click on select, and then select the Linux Mint version here that I just downloaded a little while ago. I'm going to click open, and I'm going to leave everything else here blank. I want it to be MBR partition scheme and FAT32 for the file system so that it is completely compatible. At this point, once I have verified that there is nothing on this flash drive that I want to keep, I'm going to wipe it completely. Once you've done that, just click start. You might get this pop-up. Just select write in ISO image mode, click OK. And then you're going to get a warning. Hey, everything on this drive is about to be destroyed. If you're okay with that, click OK. If not, back up your stuff first before continuing. Once you click OK, the drive is going to be wiped. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to let the process just run. First, it's going to format the drive so that it can create the correct file structure for the ISO image. Then it's just going to go do a bunch of stuff in the background in preparation of getting the disk ready to go. So I'm going to pause this and come back when it is done. So while the disk is being created, I can go ahead and create that partition in Windows that I need for Linux to install. So the easiest way in Windows 10 is to right click on your start menu and then just go to disk management. You'll see this window come up here, and this is basically showing you all your drives, all your partitions and sizes and all of that. Now remember, again, you need at least 30 gigabytes free, preferably 50 to 60. In this case, I have 410 free, so I've got plenty of room. I'm going to create a 100 gigabyte partition because I have a feeling once I start using Linux, I'm going to kind of enjoy it. So what you want to do, on the partition that is labeled C, just right click on that and choose shrink. Now, what it's going to do is ask you how much space do you want to shrink it by. In this case, I'm going to shrink it by 100,000 megabytes, which is 100 gigabytes. So if I click shrink, again, if you're shrinking 50 megabytes, it would be 50,000 or 40,000. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a rough estimate. Now, what you're looking for here, you can see that this main hard drive, which was all of this space before, is now split into my Windows partition, and now I have this 97 gigabyte unpartitioned space. From this point, you don't have to do anything else. The Linux installer is going to take care of the rest. Just click the X to close it. And you'll see also when I go here to this PC, now instead of having over 400 gigabytes free, I only have 313. That's because that 97 gig partition hasn't been created and it's not going to show up in File Explorer. So far, everything's going as planned. We just have to wait for the installer to finish. And just so I don't get too far ahead of you, I want to clarify a couple things. One, I'm recording all of this on my main machine, but I'm doing this for Linda. So the screens may look a little different. You'll see different drives or whatever. None of that really matters as long as you choose the right drive letter to create the disk. Now, if you are doing this process on the machine that you are trying to create a dual boot on, you don't have to remove the flash drive. We just got to turn around and boot to it, and I'll explain that in a second. In this case, I pulled it out of my main machine and I'm going to put it into Linda and then boot to it. So what does that mean? Well, when you turn on your computer's just going to automatically boot to the C drive. That's the main operating system. But if you have a flash drive that is a bootable flash drive, in which case the Linux installer is you can choose a different drive to boot to. So what I want to do is I want to plug this into Linda, and then when I start the computer, I'm going to tell it to boot to this instead of Windows. And then what that will do is start the process of creating a dual boot. Now, also, I'm not 100% sure that my capture software will capture all of the initial settings, so I might have to do that on my phone. I'm sorry about that, but once Linux gets started and the display drivers load and all that, I'll be able to capture it on screen. So please forgive me for that. And through the magic of video editing, just like that, we're done. So when you see this box at the bottom that says ready, you're good to go. You can go ahead and click close, and now we're ready to boot to the drive. Okay, so we've downloaded the ISO file, we've created a bootable Linux installer disk. Now what we have to do is boot to that disk to get the installation started. Now, if you created the installation disk on the machine that you're trying to dual boot, just leave the flash drive plugged in. Now, for most computers, there's a function key that you can choose to select a different boot device, anywhere from F1 to F12. But I'm going to show you how, if you're in Windows already, you can just get around that real quick. Okay, so now I am back on Linda. Now, if you're already in Windows, all you have to do is hold down the Shift key and then restart your computer and hold down that Shift key through the entire process. And this is handy if you don't know which function key to use or don't want to look it up. You'll get to this screen right here, which is a Windows troubleshooting screen, and you can select use a device. So when you get to this screen, you're going to choose the Linux installer disk and just click on it, and the computer is going to restart. So you're going to get to this screen right here. You'll see it's already set on Start Linux Mint Cinnamon. So I'm just going to hit enter, and then you'll see the Linux Mint logo, or whatever logo normally comes up with the version of Linux that you're installing. And just like that, you are on the Linux desktop, fully functional. So all we have to do here first is I'm going to go ahead and connect to a wireless network. The location for that stuff is right down here in the system tray where you're already used to going. And this is really ready to use already, right out of the box, without doing anything. And as you can see already, it's working perfectly. It's literally 100% ready to rock and roll. And this is actually running off a flash drive, and it is super fast. So I can't imagine how much faster it's going to be after I install the software. You're certainly welcome to at this point. Just poke around a little bit if you want to. You can't hurt anything because, again, you are running off a flash drive. So this will give you an opportunity to kind of get a feel for Linux a little bit. But I want to go ahead and create that dual boot. So if you look here at the top, now again, this may be different depending on which distro you're using, but here I have the option to install Linux Mint. I'm just going to simply double click that. So the installation window is going to come up. You're going to go ahead and just choose your preferred language. In this case, it's going to be English. Then for keyboard layout, also English. Now here you have the option to install multimedia codecs, which is basically just better compatibility for video. So I'm just going to go ahead and check that and click continue. And also note here, it's got different stages of the process, which automatically is better than Windows because Windows doesn't tell you anything as far as progress. So we're on step 5 of 7. So here is the important part. Okay. I mentioned earlier in the video, if you wanted to eventually wipe Windows and just use Linux, you could boot to this disk and click erase disk and install Linux Mint, and it would go and wipe the drive clean, install nothing but Linux on it. But we don't want that. We want to create a dual boot, and so we do that by clicking install Linux Mint alongside Windows Boot Manager. And then of course it's going to have its own documents, music, and personal folders completely separate from Windows. And then when Windows starts up, it'll give you the option, do you want to boot into Windows or do you want to boot into Linux? So we're going to check that option. And then once we have that option selected, we're going to click continue. And at this point, if you followed the steps earlier and created that blank partition, you should just be able to go ahead and click install now. Now what this message is going to tell you here is that before you can select a new partition size, because again, this is just recognizing the drive that's installed, okay? So what it's saying is before you can create your Linux partition, it has to write changes to the disk, and it's going to resize the partitions as needed and a whole bunch of other techie stuff in the background. Just if you need to change that for any reason, go back, but otherwise click continue. And then Linux is going to start doing its thing. Now, one final warning, if you continue the changes that you requested, which is formatting that partition, that unallocated space, it's going to do all that and create the partitions as needed. So again, if you need to make any changes, nothing has been deleted or changed at this point, you can always go back. But if you're ready to continue, just click continue. And then it's going to ask for your time zone. Go ahead and just select your time zone and click continue. And it's some basic stuff like your name. And you got a computer name here that it suggests for you. I'm just going to call it Linux so that I can recognize it on my network. And for username, I found out earlier that you cannot type a capital letter. It has to be lowercase, and I'm not sure why. I'm going to select a password. So I'm going to leave this box to log in automatically, which will just boot me right into the Linux desktop. Now I can check this box here to force me to type a password, but I don't want to do that. And you also have the option here to encrypt your home folder. We may dabble with that later, but for the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And now what it's doing is it's creating that partition. It's installing those Linux installation files into that unallocated space that we created earlier, and it's installing the operating system. Now, if you like, you can go through here and look at some of the Welcome to Linux stuff. For example, some of the apps that you can use, including Firefox, my very popular web browser that I like, Netflix, YouTube, a whole bunch of other stuff. It tells you about some of the different music options you have. Then also for watching movies and video, and photo management. Now, some of you may use Windows Photos. There's programs like GIMP and some other things that are Linux based. You can use those or find another one. And social media stuff here for you. And the default document program called LibreOffice. Now, this is very similar to OpenOffice that I've used in the past. 100% free. It is a great little program. I just prefer OpenOffice, but I don't think OpenOffice is available in Linux, so I'm going to use the free LibreOffice for any documents that I create inside of Linux. Next screen here, there is a thing called Software Manager, which is something you will learn as you use Linux, and it basically allows you to go out and look for software that is Linux compatible, and with 1 or 2 clicks, actually just install it. And we'll play with that maybe later in a different video. In the meantime, there's 30,000 free applications, free, 100% free, that you can use and get from the software manager. Here's another cool thing that some people might take advantage of. If you remember earlier when I mentioned software not running on Linux, and that is true to some degree, but there is a program that's called Wine, and also another one I think called Winboat, that allow you to run certain Windows applications, not all, but some, inside Linux. And worst case, you can use VirtualBox here to create a Windows virtual machine and actually load real actual Windows inside Linux, which that may be content for another video. That's a little more advanced than just today. So here's one of the cool features about Linux is that you can fully customize your computer, unlike Windows, where it basically allows you a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of personalization. One of the beauties of Linux is that you can kind of tell it exactly what you want it to look like, top to bottom. So there's so much more flexibility inside Linux. But again, content for another video. Now, one of the cool things that is in Linux, instead of unlike in Windows, where you would have to open a program and get notified of an update, here you can go and from one place look and see what programs need updates and just check all the boxes for all the software you want to update and click install updates, and it all happens magically in the background. And here's an important one. If you need help with learning Linux, the best place to start is, in this case, the Linux Mint website. Generally, I would stay away from websites like Reddit. There are a lot of people out there that are helpful, but there are a lot of people out there that will literally talk to you like you're an idiot if you ask the most basic questions. And I've never quite understood why Linux people scream, hey, use Linux, use Linux, use Linux, but don't ask me how to do anything. Figure it out yourself. Well, and that's the problem, because a lot of people are novices and they kind of want somebody to tell them how to do it. I don't mind trying this, but I don't know how to just sit down and start using it. So be careful where you go looking for help. Try to stay away from sites like Reddit because they can be very toxic. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So in the meantime, we're just going to continue to let it do everything it needs to do right here. As you can see, it's just doing a bunch of techie stuff, none of which you have to worry about. Hands off and just wait for it to finish. And just a few minutes later, installation is finished. Now, of course, you can tell it you want to continue testing, but you've already installed it, so we kind of want to go ahead and get that process going. So if you click Restart Now, you will now have the option to boot into either Linux or Windows. So we're going to click Restart Now. And of course, it even tells you to remove the installation media. So we're going to remove our flash drive and hit Enter. And as before, we're going to get a selection window here. And if you just leave it blank, it's going to assume that you want to boot into Linux, so you don't even have to touch it. And obviously, if you wanted to boot into Windows, you would just select Windows Boot Manager, and then your Windows 10 or 11 would just boot. And then you want to go back into Linux, you restart, and you can switch back and forth all day. So this is the Linux Mint welcome screen, which you can turn off. This will run every time until you tell it not to. And it's just basically saying, welcome to Linux. And then it does give you some basic stuff that you might want to learn about. And as I said before, when I was running Linux off that flash drive, it was still pretty darn fast. But running this off the computer itself, it is really, really fast. And the best part is no telemetry or very limited telemetry, and you are not tied to Microsoft in any way, shape, or form. So you could go in here and just start poking around. If you wanted to type a document, go into LibreOffice and boom, create one just like that. All kinds of neat stuff. You want to browse the internet, go here, go to Firefox, and it just works. And that's pretty cool. We're not going to get into a whole bunch of stuff about how to use Linux. There's a billion things in here, and honestly, I need to learn them first before I teach you how to do them. But everything you need to do, you can do through preferences right here off your start menu, and then you just choose what you want to change. It's all right here, and I just think honestly, it's pretty impressive, and it turned old Linda into a pretty darn fast computer. And if I want to switch back to Windows, I can just restart. Then I'm going to select Windows Boot Manager. And as you can see, just like that, it's loading my Windows. And here you go. We're back in Windows. Everything is working. Everything's exactly where it was before. No changes, anything like that. I haven't damaged anything. The only difference is now I have two operating systems on this computer. So if I had software that was Windows only or was installed on this computer, or maybe I don't have a way to reinstall it, but I really don't want to deal with Microsoft and all the AI and the telemetry and the spying and all that. This gives me the opportunity to boot into Windows when I need to, but also use Linux for my daily tasks like surfing the web and creating documents. So thank you for coming along this journey with me. I'm learning just as I'm teaching you. Honestly, I think Linux is pretty cool. Is it perfect for everybody? No. But the cool part about it is, and as I showed you before, you don't have to actually install it to use it and see if the things that you do on a daily basis you can do in Linux. And Linda is breathing a sigh of relief because she's finally able to be the computer that I need her to be, even though it's on old hardware. And guess what? No Microsoft requirements, none of that crap, none of the telemetry, the spying, none of that stuff. It's just a free open source operating system that's designed for the user, not for the company. So if this video helped you at all, make sure you hit subscribe below. I would greatly appreciate it. If you would like a recommendation on a new PC, again, that link is in the description. I'd be happy to help you. And if you have a suggestion for the next video, whether you want me to explore a little bit more in Linux or you have some other idea, make sure you drop me a comment or send me an email. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.